Good morning, everybody, and thank you for listening to the Positive Talk Hour on Soul Talk Radio. Pretty excited about having our guest on today. He wrote a book, and it's a great subject, The Secrets of Ancient America, and I'm going to pronounce this Archeoastronomy and the Legacy of the Phoenicians, Celts, and Other Forgotten Explorers. We have Carl Lehrburger, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, on the line. Carl, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. It's just wonderful to be here on Soul Talk Radio, and greetings to also Positive Talk Radio listeners.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I know we've had a little bit of challenges because I've had some busy schedules getting on the show and getting this all set up, and but we're here, and I'm pretty excited. So just a few questions. I was just kind of looking over my notes here, and one of the things I found very interesting is that, at least in my studies, may not be out there well known for the average person. I've known for a while that Christopher Columbus obviously was not the first discoverer or the first person to come to America. But I do find, and I'm actually surprised when I talk to people, and they're like, they don't really know that. And so I guess it's because of my studies, but you actually go really in depth and have taught me even stuff that I didn't know, that ancient old world people other than the Vikings have been to America way before any of us ever thought. And I find it very interesting. What got you, I know you talk about in the book, well, what got you into the study of exploring something that obviously the masses do not understand here in America? What got you into this field of work?
Well, interestingly enough, it's very compatible with the theme of the show, Soul Talk. And so much of history and rock art appears to be dealing with outside phenomena and exoteric subjects. But what drove me and continues to drive me is actually the esoteric elements that we find of our history that have really been lost. And when we talk about the exoteric history, or the old history is how I like to refer to it, which is centered around the mythology of Columbus, who is seen and portrayed as the discoverer of America, which is the most ludicrous thing one can imagine if you take a look at it, because when he arrived, there of course were indigenous people here that had been living here for thousands of years. So I begin the book talking about the mythology of Columbus because what the book demonstrates is that we've been lied to about our history. And so it becomes shocking for many people to hear that, no, Columbus did not discover America. He wasn't first. The Vikings didn't discover America. They weren't first. In fact, Columbus was last. There had been a tradition of old world travelers coming both across the Atlantic and across the Pacific thousands of years before Columbus. And there's ample evidence of this throughout the Americas, but it's been completely disguised. Now, this is not to negate the commonly held belief that the Native Americans came across, I should say the ancestors to the Native Americans came across the Bering Straits and down through Alaska and Canada into North America, Central America, and South America. Clearly that transpired. But what's not known is, or not recognized, is that in addition to this mass migration, we also have travelers and migrations from Europe, Mediterranean, Africa, Asia, as well as India into the Americas. And that's part of the secret history of America that has contradicted the Columbus myth, and why it's not known to most people.
Mm-hmm. It's just an interesting subject, and it opens up so many explanations of things that are in America. I believe you talk about several of the petroglyphs in America that are not necessarily Native American writings, and so I don't know if you could talk a little. Can you talk a little about those petroglyphs? I think there's only a dozen of them are that you talk about in the book, or there's not a lot of them that you talk about in the book because there's not a lot of them out there. Could you talk a little bit about those and how you discovered those and what they are from and what their origins are from as far as Friday?
Sure. So, the ancients had had different languages of communicating, and one of these is the petroglyphs or rock art that they inscribed and left in stone. Another language of the ancients is something that we refer to as archaeoastronomy, which is really the ancients looking at the influence of the sun and the moon on the petroglyphs and on monuments. So as an example of archaeoastronomy, Stonehenge. To an archaeologist, initially they were looking at digging and looking for artifacts, but it became apparent that Stonehenge was a calendrical monument, that it was aligned to specific days that created intentional alignments. So this is the field of archaeoastronomy, what we call archaeoastronomy today. And this is really a language that the ancients used, not just, the old world travelers, but certainly the Native Americans and the ancestors to the Native Americans. They use these languages to convey incredibly sophisticated cosmological concepts. Now, you make the great point, and I'd like to emphasize it, that 99.999% of the millions of petroglyphs found in North America were created by Native Americans or ancestors to the Native Americans. And it's a very small handful of sites and perhaps dozens or scores of different petroglyphs throughout the Americas that not only demonstrate, but in my opinion and what I've advanced in Secrets of Ancient America, prove beyond any doubt that the ancients were here. And we see the esoteric traditions of the ancients preserved in the rock art, and that's what makes it so fascinating and such a compelling field of study for me, is because of this esoteric or soulful side of the history. And what we learn is that much of the rock art, unlike people think, have to do with maps or really outside phenomena, deal with the nature of the soul, the journey of the soul, and some of these traditions, are readily available to those that can find the rock art and really understand it. So the ancients fortunately left many of their traditions for us moderns to uncover and really help understand the life and resolution to some of the dilemmas that we face today. So that's really the connection between the ancient knowledge left and us moderns really not having access to that because of the brainwashing and the material emphasis on materialism, that has come down through the ages. We've really lost much of the knowledge and the capabilities that the ancients had in terms of really understanding the natural cycles and how to live with nature as opposed to against it. So one of the three, I'd say, major esoteric traditions that I write about in the book, I start out with the site called the Pathfinder. And this is a Native American site in Colorado. And it does incorporate a very sophisticated archaeoastronomy or light shows on specific times and a day of the equinox, which is in March, around March 21st, and also around September 21st, the days of equal night and equal day. This was obviously a very sacred day to the ancients because many of the archaeoastronomy sites throughout the Americas are aligned to the equinox, and that's when we are able to see and have revealed to us, using the knowledge of the archaeoastronomy and being able to read the petroglyphs, some of the knowledge and cosmology of the ancients. In the case of the Native Americans at Pathfinder, it is a fertility site celebrating rebirth in the spring, and the many fertility symbols, not only of the animals and the coming of the animals, but the fertility of humans. And what is portrayed in the petroglyphs and the light show that accompanies the petroglyphs on the day of the equinox is an incredible story of the creation myth of ancestors to the Native American peoples, and it's very craftily and artfully demonstrated with light and shadow on petroglyphs. And what we see represented is that a large, extremely large, 12-foot light dagger at noontime comes into this cave and intersects with a petroglyph character who in the book I identify as Changing Woman, or First Mother, also referred to as Watapuki. And we see this ancient story of the first father, the son, inseminating first mother, giving birth to the tribe or to the nations. And this is really portrayed on the equinox on this giant panel, and you can really see how it was set up so that it was a teaching device. That is, that on these days, you could envision the knowledgeable people in the tribe, both probably men and women, taking young people and telling them the stories of their tribe, and seeing it played out on this stone with panel filled with petroglyphs. So it's not just we're telling you the story of our people, but we're showing you in a light show this, and there these young adults are kneeling down before this panel, representing the sun coming and combining with first mother to give birth. So it's just an extraordinary panel and encoded with this creation myth of early Native Americans. Now, the second tradition that is talked about in the book is that of the Celts. The Celts, of all the Old World peoples in America, probably left the most evidence. And in the book, Secrets of Ancient America, I devote about 5 chapters to the Celts because of their significant travels throughout Eastern America and making their way well into the Oklahoma Panhandle and Colorado thousands of years ago. And like Native American archaeoastronomy sites, the Celtic sites are filled with not only symbols and timed to reveal a story at specific times of year, including the equinox. But unlike the Native American sites, the Celtic sites are accompanied by a written language, and they actually inscribe, as part of the petroglyphic panels, a writing system called Ogam, often pronounced Om. And this is a writing system used throughout much of Europe, including the Iberian Peninsula, parts of France, really Celtic Europe. And there are hundreds of examples of Ogam writing, mostly in stone, in Europe. Well, we have Ogam here in America. And the Ogam is a writing system that can be written in different languages. But what we find with Ogam in America is that it can be read in Celtic languages. So that the archaeoastronomy sites in Colorado and in Oklahoma really have the writing that we can read and that accompany the petroglyphs and the light shows. So we can read the writing. What are they talking about? Well, they're talking about the sun god, the travel of the sun god. They refer to the sun god as Bel, B-E-L. They also refer to the sun god as Grian. These are Celtic words and representing the sun god. And the most sophisticated example of the Celtic archaeoastronomy and Celtic writing and Celtic petroglyphs that we have in North America are found in the Oklahoma Panhandle at a site called Anubis Caves. Now, the word Anubis, viewers and listeners may recognize as the Egyptian jackal god, or Lord of Night, often referred to as Lord of Death. And one of the early researchers of Anubis Caves, Gloria Farley, identified a jackal or a dog-like petroglyph in the caves as Anubis because of its similarity to how the Anubis petroglyph is portrayed in Egypt, but most importantly because of the crown that it had, often referred to as the white crown of Egypt, but also a staff coming out of its back. So this is a very specific image, unlike what a Native American portrayal of a jackal or a dog would be, which there are many examples. But in Anubis Caves, what we have preserved is a very rich tradition of the Mithraic religion. And the Mithraic religion was practiced before and Christianity, and really consistent with Christianity until it was completely wiped out by the church and discontinued. The monuments were destroyed, and what is left in Europe are the Mithraeums, or the remnants of some of the churches or structures of the Mithraic religion, but most have been destroyed. However, what we find, and this is so interesting, in America, is that probably one of the best preserved Mithraeums of the Mithraic religion is found in Oklahoma. And these 7 caves, 5 of them which contain extensive Celtic writing in the Ogham writing system, extensive petroglyphs portraying the story of equinox, the story of the death of the sun god, and the travels of the sun god, in this case, Mithras. The caves also are very much oriented towards astronomy. You can see the different constellations portrayed. In fact, the character of Mithras is very much associated with the constellation Perseus in the sky. And so we can make a direct connection between Mithras and Perseus as cosmological characters and as imprints. Perseus from the sky, from the stars, is reborn as Mithras here, in this world. And with the coming of the night on the equinox, as the sun is setting, we have the character of Mithras go into shadow. And standing above Mithras is the jackal god, or Anubis, which perfectly represents that the Lord of Night now has taken over from the sun god, who is now in shadow. And we see this as not only on a religious level, but we also see it on a very personal level of death and rebirth. And this is, the many dimensions that the ancient wisdom has encoded into these petroglyphs in these sacred sites. So for those that are really looking for proof that the old world peoples did make it to America, the best and the most compelling cases that I found were the Celtic peoples beginning perhaps in New England, mining copper in the Great Lake regions, building their stronghold in New Hampshire and southern New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Vermont, in New York. Some of these, their ruined sites can be still seen, specifically America's Stonehenge in southern New Hampshire, and finding their way to the west, following the rivers, eventually the Mississippi, and heading further west, following the Arkansas, where presumably they were trying to get across to the mountains. We know they made it as far as Oklahoma and Colorado. How much farther west is debatable. They also made it up to Alberta, Canada, where we can see some of their inscriptions as well. So in addition to the Celts coming from the east, the third example of some of the esoteric traditions in America come from the greater Indus Valley cultures, perhaps 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, coming across the Pacific, not the Atlantic. And of course, this is a little harder to document in the rock art because most of the panels are really so worn that where there is evidence, it's very difficult to interpret. And part of this is a result of a misunderstanding of the several examples of old world rock art in California and Nevada. Of course, Native Americans, want to claim all of the rock art is from their ancestors. And so there is great resistance to the idea that in Eastern California, there is a site that's really a monument to Shiva. And we also find the archaeologists taking great umbrage at the idea that Indus Valley cultures, greater Turkish, Indo-Turkish peoples crossed the Pacific in very large ships, 10 times bigger than the ships that Columbus had, with crews of hundreds of people in large-scale mining expeditions that found their way into California and into Nevada over many hundreds of years, mining silver, gold, and perhaps copper. The one particular site featured in the book is called Mojave North, and I do not identify the site or give much information about its location other than to say that it is in Eastern California. And at this particular site, which is probably smaller than an acre or two, we have discovered over 13 archaeoastronomical alignments that take place, which is pretty unique, not only in the country, but in the world, to see such abundance of calendrical evidence. But what's astounding, really, is that it's not just the equinoxes that we find sunrise and sunset alignments, but we find them also on the solstices, which the winter solstice is the shortest day of the year, right around December 21st. And we find it around the summer solstice, which is around June 21st. So in addition to these four celestial days of the year, winter solstice, the two equinoxes, and summer solstice, the ancients also marked and celebrated the cross-quarter days. Now, these cross-quarter days are the exact days between the equinox and the solstices. So, for example, right around May, we have what has come down to us as May Day. But before it was May Day, it was in the Celtic traditions, it was Beltane, or the celebration of the sun god Bel. And we have this with all four cross-quarter days, two celebrating goddesses and two celebrating sun gods. Well, we have all of these 8 celestial days represented at Mojave North. And it's a a tragic situation in the sense that because the wisdom of the site is not recognized, because archaeoastronomy is not recognized really as a science by many of the archaeologists, this sacred site remains unprotected. We estimate that over 30% of the original petroglyphs are gone due to mining activity. Most of the remaining sites most of the remaining glyphs are very damaged, and some are unrecoverable. Yet, still, with what's left, we're able to see the evidence of an ancient civilization that came to the site and encoded their traditions into the rock art that coincided with these solar cosmological events that take place on the winter solstice, the summer solstice, the two equinoxes, and the four cross-quarter days. This is perhaps the greatest representation of the Indus Valley cultures in America, yet it remains very vulnerable and unrecognized. And the traditions that we find encoded at Mojave North reverberate throughout the Americas. And I'll just give you one example before turning it back to you, Jeremy. And that is on equinox, as the sun rises at Mojave North, we find a light dagger, just like we did at the Pathfinder site. In the case of the Pathfinder, the light dagger struck First Mother and inseminated her, and it was very clear. At Mojave North, the light dagger is in the shape of a serpent, and it has a forked jaw that is very specific. And on the day of the equinox, as the sun rises, this light serpent moves across the panel, and the open jaws fit perfectly inside of what we call an egg in the middle of four concentric circles or spirals. And so this particular image of the serpent consuming the sun, or the serpent consuming a disk, is played out with light and shadow on an ancient petroglyph in California.
Wow.
But some of your listeners and viewers may recognize that motif of the sun eating or engulfing a disk or an egg or a sun is the same imagery, that we find at Ohio's Serpent Mound, which is the largest earthwork in the Americas, and it's the same image except that it's an earthwork. It's 3 feet high, and it's hundreds of feet long. But that same disc is in the open jaws of the serpent. So which came first? The Mojave North image or the earthwork image, and where did it come from? Well, these are great questions, and we're going to leave that to other researchers once we're able to get the diffusionist position as part of the debate. Up to this point, it's really been the archeo priests who believe in the independent inventionist theory, that is, that culture grew up independent. And this has been the prevailing paradigm, if you will, in anthropology and archaeology. The diffusionists, on the other hand, believe that culture grew through outside influences. So we really have the debate still intact between the diffusionist and the independent inventionist, if you will, or the isolationist. And clearly these three examples of the Pathfinder, a Native American site, Anubis Caves, and 4 other sites identified in the book with Celtic traditions, and Mojave North with Indus Valley traditions, teach us that all of the ancients really possessed an incredible depth and understanding of the cosmos, and had a lifestyle that really reflected a certain balance that I think has been lost to moderns today.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really good point, and when you're talking about modern day views of archaeology, or where they think that we consider that China and Europe and all of them were separate, and the Native Americans and the Egyptians. But then it leads you to the question: how is there so many parallels that are very similar? It's like when you talk about when you're talking about the sun god and the divine, or I would call it the divine feminine, coming together in the work you've done, I automatically go to Egypt in my mind, and I go to Osiris and Isis and different stories, and even Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and many, many, many different stories that I can't even remember through my research, and I forget sometimes. And it leads me to the question: why are they in such resistance to something that, and then they refer to it, if they don't understand it, as pseudoscience? And it's like, I do know that there are some researchers out there that put out bold statements, or it's speculation without research. So I can sort of understand that in a way. But where do you think that there's such resistance to, and to say it's just one thing, because I've said, well, maybe it's just because their egos or don't want to let go of the concept. But then it goes through, this isn't just a modern day thing. This has been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. A new paradigm comes in, and they're in resistance to it. So why do you think that we have such a resistance to new ideas? They're not even really new ideas. They've been around for a long, long time.
Well, that's really the fundamental theme of the book, is to attempt to answer that question.
Yeah.
And why we have so much evidence that ancient travelers from Europe, the Mediterranean, and even greater Indus Valley were here in America, yet it's denied. And people who are proponents of the diffusionist position are denigrated and completely ignored, and in some cases discredited. So let's go back almost to the beginning and come forward to see if we can answer the question. Mm-hmm. Most moderns think we've evolved through time. And what the rock art has showed me is that in some respects, we've devolved. And that the ancients actually had more intuitive abilities, more connection to nature here on planet Earth, but also a greater cosmological understanding of where humans fit in the universal scheme. And it's my position, and one that I've represented in the book, is that you could say, pick a time before the Tower of Babel, there was a one world religion. Mm-hmm. And it was an understanding of humans' place in the cosmos, as you refer to the importance of the divine feminine in our life, and a deep and profound understanding and connection to the earth. And a lot of this has been lost in the conquest, the wars, the scarcity, the Dark Ages, followed by the conquest of the Americas. The quest for gold, the quest for riches, the quest for power has really left some of the one world religion concepts of how we're all connected on a very universal level behind. So once we've lost the one world religion, it's everyone for themselves. And the work of what is referred to in the book of the ancient magi, that is these cosmological, probably mostly guys who were navigators, astronomers, astrologers. They knew mining, they knew shipbuilding. They left their mark for us to see, but unfortunately, our eyes are so closed that we haven't been able to see what they left. And so we have spiraled into the modern era, so filled with the ability for massive brainwashing. And that's really what we've seen with the old history, which emphasizes the conquering Christians really did the Native American people a favor, and this by destroying their culture, by instigating slavery in the Americas, and creating massive genocide throughout the Americas. So that image of that we're doing the Native Americans a favor, that it's our divine destiny to take the lands of other people and conquer them and exploit those lands, that is the modern concept that has replaced a more holistic a way of thinking that the ancients had. Mm-hmm. And anyone that would challenge the exceptionalism of the American experience, of the benefits of the conquest, are challenging not only the historians, but they're challenging the archaeologists that have left out this part of our history that has been really denied to us. It's not that the researchers haven't presented the case, it's that case has been so diminished and so discredited that the common American is shocked to hear that Columbus was last. They're just in disbelief when you tell them up in New England that throughout New England are Celtic structures, Celtic writing, and in fact you can go see some of them. Hebrew people and Jewish people are shocked to learn that there are Hebrew inscriptions in the Americas, in New Mexico and in Arizona, and Hebrew artifacts that demonstrate the Hebrews were here. We have Roman coins and Roman shipwrecks off Central America. We have the traditions of Southeast Asian people and Chinese people that can be found in many symbols, ranging from the world of the Mayans all the way up to some of the Pueblo peoples in North America. So everybody is, wow, how could this have happened? How could I have not known about it? And it's because, and here's the sad truth, Jeremy, we've been lied to. And until we awaken from the dream, until we awaken from the lies that we've been taught, we are destined to live in the past and the mythology of the Columbus story. So, why haven't we been able to wake up? We're so dummied down, number one, and our mental thinking, and we've lost that connection to the divine feminine, to the life and death of the sun god, to the hero with 1,000 faces, as Joseph Campbell refers to it, and the powers that be, the archaeologist community, the archeo priests that are the gatekeepers to the universities, the mainstream publications that talk about history and archaeology, such as the Smithsonian and National Geographic, refuse to acknowledge this part of our history, and you will not be able to find a story about Celtic travelers in America in National Geographic.
No.
Even though many researchers have documented them, and it's just taboo. So here's the answer, and it comes from the title of a book written by Alan Watts: The Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are. And it's just that if for those that want to really know who you are, and you want to take a road to get there, it's probably going to come at the expense of conflicting with the overarching philosophy or culture of our day.
Yeah. There's actually a passage in the Bible that says when you awaken, there's a path that's more narrow, and there's another one that everybody takes. The path that's narrow is the one that very seldom, very few take. And it's along those same lines is that you're going to get a lot of resistance going down that road, or people are going to think you're crazy, or but there's where all the riches are at. And it's all in the mind. You bring up some really good points, but really before we get started, go on. I want to just give everybody your website. It's a newhistoryofamerica.net, and I'm going to be putting it down in the description of the show as well. So definitely go out and check Carl's website out, because there's where you can buy the book, and you can actually learn more about him from the website, and even some of his other work that he does. It's there as well, and pictures and stuff like that. So. But I was just pondering and thinking about a few things as you were talking, and I thought to myself, I think that we think that we've evolved because you and I can sit here on our computers. You can sit in your conference room, and I can sit at my dining room table, and we can have cameras and all that kind of stuff. We think we've evolved because of this. But you bring a really good point up when you talk about intuition, and the ancients understood what some would call cosmic order or natural law, or universal law. The way that the universe flows, I guess, is maybe another way to do it. And they had a sense about them that we have, and that's the sense of connectedness, I guess, would be the best way to say it. And because we think that we've evolved technology-wise, we have lost our sense of connectedness, or it's very small, it's dumbed us down because we don't have that connection. And I'm not sure if that's where you're going with it, but we were talking about the beginning of the theme of the show is the soul. And that's how you started on this journey. And it seems to me that the ancients understood how the soul works and how it flows in its place within the cosmos. And so I think that's where you're absolutely right. We've unevolved in some sense because we don't have that connection anymore. Or if we do, it's only on the physical. So I was just pondering that and thinking about that's probably the reason why we have people in such resistance, because they don't have that connection anymore. So
I think that's a big part of it. Also, we live in a very materialistic world.
Yeah.
And but at the end of the day, when we talk about the gatekeepers at the universities, and we talk about the editors of National Geographic, or we talk about the people that really have done their best to discredit all diffusionist scholars, whatever the merit of their research, we're talking about a group of mostly men that are protecting the patriarchy, that are protecting the ability to dictate a history to the rest of us. A great example cited in the book is the anthropologist Dr. Gunnar Thompson, who in the 90s wrote American Discovery, and since then has undertaken other research. And what Dr. Thompson demonstrated is at least 25 symbols from Asia that found their way into the Americas, spitting images, and that they really demonstrating that they only could have got here with diffusion, beginning around, and by here I should say Central America, that these symbols made their way to Central America from Asia. And he I think demonstrates that the striking images are so similar that it really proves that the symbols made their way to the Americas through diffusion. Now, Dr. Thompson was not able to publish his thesis. They did not accept it. He's never been given tenure at a university, even though he's written many books, papers, and is an authority on some aspects of the diffusionism that took place through these symbols, as well as other areas of anthropology. And to this day, he has been continuously discredited and not published. So until we are able to have a fair hearing in the areas of epigraphy, which is the study of ancient writing, in the areas of anthropology, archaeology, archaeoastronomy, as well as history itself, where we have gatekeepers, professors, chairman heads, and sponsors that do not want to see the Columbus first mythology challenged. They don't want their previous research challenged that denies these ancient travelers from Europe and the Mediterranean region going way back before the Celts to the Phoenicians, travelers from Asia and India coming to America. To accept that they were here is to prove that the paradigm archaeological theory in place is wrong.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to admit they're wrong. And so I think really that's what we're up against.
We're up against, yeah.
It's amazing to me that there's an underground in America on internet radio, in particular, where you have, you put a percentage on it, Jeremy, 5% of the people, 15% of the, 20% of the people. It's not shocking to hear what I'm saying, that we've been lied to about our history. Mm-hmm. But that message remains kind of among us, in the underground. And the progress that we can track on changing this paradigm of ignorance really is how this particular subject gets out to people in the mainstream media, in the mainstream history books, in the mainstream magazines such as the National Geographic. And really, until we see a change there, we have not shifted the paradigm, and that's what I hope we're on the verge of doing. One reason that I wrote the book, it's not that I'm that great of a writer or that I'm an archaeologist, but one reason that I wrote the book is because I wanted to lend my voice with the evidence that I had gathered that we have to change the paradigm. And many researchers before me and contemporary research, including Scott Walter, who is the producer of the show now on the History Channel, American Unearthed, are really doing our best to make the case that we need to re-examine our history, and we need to re-examine our basic assumptions about the Americas and who we are, and why we believe that Columbus discovered America.
Mm-hmm. I think we should probably add in there that you wrote this book, but this is over 25 years of research, and you've spent. This is not something you just did on a dime. You spent many years looking, researching and going to these places and studying them and stuff. So, you in that sense, I know you said you're not an archaeologist, but you have the expertise that maybe one would have. You know what I mean? At least a lot of knowledge and experience. That I think that's commendable, because a lot of people out there are researching and they're using assumptions, especially a lot of the internet bloggers. Which is good, because I think what exactly what you said is that it's very true. It's not news to the people that are listening to internet radios and watching blogs, and what you're saying is not a surprise to them. But the ones that are out there, because we have alternative types of media and stuff like that, other than the mainstream media. So there is a great movement that is shifting right now, and people are starting to discover and realize that, like you say, we've been lied to. And because we've been lied to, there is but I have found in this community that this alternative media, that they argue amongst each other too. It's a very interesting way of looking at things. But I just had a topic I wanted to talk about. It maybe it's because I've been there before, but Serpent Mound, I have a very I've been there once before, and I have it's such an incredible place to go to, and I'm assuming, I know you've been there, or you talk about it in the book. Could you talk a little bit about you, because you have a very different take on Serpent Mound, and I know you talked about it briefly earlier, but I didn't know if you could kind of expound on that, about what you discovered there and what you see it as.
Well, I'd like to do that, but I'd like to also comment on, trying to get a grasp on how close we are really to that age of Aquarius, or that realizing, the new paradigm. Because I think guys like you and me have been talking about it for decades. And we've thought, we were on the verge of breakthroughs many a time. And in the case of the subject at hand, I think way back in 2002, the Atlantic Monthly did a article called "The Diffusionists Have Landed," and in it talks about some of the evidence that we've talked about today, and that the actual paradigm looks like it's going to be shifting as the archeo priesthood is in retreat. Well, that proved, I think, to be wrong.
Yeah.
And I was at a particular site and listening to a diffusionist astronomer talk about it takes at least one generation for change to take place. And I think in the Bible, what did they have? 2 generations in the wandering in Exodus. Well, since that astronomer made that statement to me, in the 70s, we've gone through now, we're approaching 3 generations.
Oh, wow.
And the information that I presented in my book on the Celts in America, that was not original research. That was, as you point out, finding the experts, making the travels to meet them in rural America, getting up at 3 in the morning to get out to these sites for the sunrise, coming back and back, listening to the stories, listening to these original researchers from the 70s and 80s tell the story, show how it works, explain the evidence there. And now, being part of that tradition, now, I stand on the shoulders of those folks who took the time to work with a young tenderfoot like me, kind of eyes wide open, thinking everything I saw was, proof that the Celts were here. Well, nothing could be farther from the truth. That to find the evidence of ancient travelers from across the Atlantic and Pacific oceans, it takes a remarkable a set of eyes and perseverance and willingness to come back. And one of the biggest challenges that any researcher in this field faces is not the scorn of the archeo priesthood, but it's really the many hoaxes and frauds that we find in the historical record. For example, throughout the Midwest, in Michigan and Ohio, there are literally hundreds of modern tablets that were created to look like they were from an ancient people. And some well-meaning diffusionist scholars that are really on our side of the equation are using these so-called evidence to prove that, for example, Hebrews or Egyptians were here. So many diffusionists, many enthusiasts will just say, hey, this is real world stuff. How come people, don't believe it? Well, they don't believe it because there's a tradition of frauds and hoaxes that have been uncovered. Mm-hmm. So all researchers have to really be skeptical and understand that in this country we had the magical era of hoaxes, I think they call it. So it takes not only a willingness to look at the evidence and an enthusiasm to keep at it, but a discernment to know that this area is fraught with misrepresentations, not only from the archeo priesthood and traditional archaeologists who refuse to look at the evidence, but also the in some cases, there being frauds, hoaxes, and faulty evidence that really take us down the wrong road. In addition to that, candidly, some of the diffusionist researchers have made mistakes, not consciously, but when you're doing things for the first time, when you're a trailblazer, sometimes your research methods get a little sloppy. Sometimes you make mistakes. This was really the case of Dr. Barry Fell, who wrote America BC in 1976 and really founded the diffusionist movement in America. And in spite of his 3 books, many articles, and incredible discoveries that he made serious mistakes. And as a result of that, he became fodder for the archeo priesthood, for the archaeologists, and anybody for decades that claimed to have any insight into old world travelers in the New World were thrown in the a bucket with Barry Fell, and the bathwater went out with the baby. So while Barry Fell did make mistakes, unfortunately he was discredited in his many discoveries, including the discovery of appearance of Celtic ogham in America, are unknown to most Americans, and those that do know of Barry Fell think of him as a fraud. And perhaps another example would be the most popular diffusionist of his day, Thor Heyerdahl, who sailed the famous Kon-Tiki to demonstrate that the ancients could use reed vessels to cross the oceans. Well, National Geographic was very generous with many articles on Thor Heyerdahl, but very few people, if anyone, know of his greatest diffusionist work, which was a book that was never ever translated out of Norwegian, called No Borders in English, which he describes a greater Vinland in upper New York in the Great Lakes region, and documents that these pre-Columbian colonies in North America were very rich agricultural communities, and that he documents them by going to the Vatican and going through the church records themselves. So his work was never published outside of Norway. Who speaks Norwegian? So we can see that it's taking more than the 1 or 2 generations to overthrow this paradigm. And it's for that reason that now more than ever, we need a greater effort, to take the blinders off, not only the blinders off on the secrets of ancient America, but in other areas of our worldly pursuits.
Very cool. There's just so much information. You can't even pack it into an hour. Well, I just want to remind everybody that your website is a newhistoryofamerica.net, and like I said, you can purchase the book there, and there's a lot of valuable information there right on the site as well. So, Carl, I just want to thank you for being on the show. I definitely would like to have you back on sometime so maybe we could go in more depth to different aspects of the book. But it definitely has been a pleasure having you on.
Well, great. And thank you so much. And viewers can purchase the book at my site, www.newhistoryofamerica. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to come back and talk to you again, Jeremy.
Thank you, Carl, so much, and have a blessed day.